Morning, everybody. I made a post yesterday about why I'm a flower farmer and a little bit about how I do it and how we make a living here at Common Farm. And Wilderness Park Flowers came back with a question. She said, I'm assuming, they said, that they wanted to know whether I think it's possible to make a living as a flower farmer without teaching workshops, because they had seen a post somewhere suggesting that workshops would be a necessary part of the process. And I think it's such an important question that I'm going to devote a whole post to this answer while I get on with my day. So stick with me. You're going to be following me around like you did yesterday. I've just got to get all these seeds into the greenhouse because it is the 15th of February. It's seed sowing day. Yay! And if you're new to the channel, you're very welcome. Please subscribe. Press the bell icon and we'll tell you when we've got more clips coming up. If any of the tips and tricks I give you along the way are useful, you can always buy me a coffee. And best of all, join my club. The links for coffee buying and club joining are in the blurb to all my clips. And enjoy. Come on we go. Flower farming this time of year does require a bit of jiggery-pokery. So out of the small greenhouse are coming freshly sprouted ranunculus for my last succession. So that the seeds can go in. These will go into the polytunnel, which is behind me, on benches not yet planted for another week or so. We'll get there. So back to the question of, can you make a living as a flower farmer without teaching workshops? Of course you can. What you have to do though, as I say again and again and again, and I recommend you all, if you are interested in doing this, come on either my lifestyle business workshop, where I will teach you this process really effectively, or come on the career change flower farming workshop, which I run online and here at the farm. Or if you're already established and want something bigger, then my flower farming intensive is also extremely useful. But the principle is this: if you know how much you need to make, you can work back from that in order to grow enough to sell, to make that money. Here's the objective: making a living. What is your living? What's your enough? Go back to the beginning. Can you grow enough that you can sell at a high enough price to meet that figure? And sometimes this will mean that you are not going to be perhaps the kind of flower farmer that you've seen on Instagram, where you're making lovely bouquets all the time and people are doing all the fiddly stuff. You might have a smaller scale plot and less time, which means that you need to grow higher value. Simple. Or you're very good at the floristry, so you can charge a premium for your floristry because you're very good at it. So you need to grow bouquets, but can you make that floristry fast enough to scale it enough to make your enough? Good question. Think about it. Really, the question is not whether one can make a living as a flower farmer without holding workshops, but whether you can. And in order to do that, you have to do the maths, because the living you need to make and the living I need to make are not the same. Of course they're not the same. If you simply do the maths and say, I'm going to grow I don't know, I'm going to plant 1,000 peonies, say. And in 4 years' time, I will be harvesting between 5 and 10 blooms. Let's be really, really modest. Let's say 5 blooms per peony. And I'm going to sell them at £2 each. That's £10,000. Now, that's by no means a living. And in the 4 years, you've had to pay for the land and pay for the mulching and pay for the watering and look after them. And when it comes to harvest, you have to find a market and sell them, because you won't be the only person growing peonies in your neighbourhood. There'll be somebody else. So your peonies have to be super duper peonies, the very best peonies. So obviously those peonies are not going to make you a living. £10,000 a year is, I would posit, not enough. So what else are you going to do? Well, I don't know anyone who only grows peonies. People grow lots of different things. So yes, if you do the maths, you can absolutely make a living without teaching workshops. So why do I teach workshops so much? Well, in my old age, I have discovered the truth in what Socrates said. And I believe him when he says that a life unexamined is not worth living. So, what I've done is I have used the opportunity which teaching gives me to examine what I do. And I have found it the most invaluable part of my business is teaching other people to do what I do, because teaching, for me, because I may as well do it properly, makes me think really, really carefully about the processes that I go through in order to make my business work. I happen to be a flower farmer, but I could just as easily be a jam maker or a pie maker or a patchwork quilt maker like my mother. There are so many different kinds of businesses that one can run from home. That does not mean that one should run a business and not make any money. And I very, very much enjoy the process of thinking hard about what I do and why I do it, so that I can help other people make informed decisions about what they do and how they do it. However, it is important to acknowledge also that while I teach all these workshops, I cannot be flower farming. The activity. If I'm teaching a workshop, I'm not out here sorting out my greenhouse. And it is true that I teach a great many workshops during the year because I like it. I really enjoy it. I love seeing the penny drop on people's faces as I explain whatever it is we're talking about, social media for small business or lifestyle businesses or career change flower farming or the flower farmers year or whatever it is that I'm talking about. It gives me enormous pleasure to see people go, oh yes, I understand. And so for that reason, I teach, well, during term time, sometimes 3 times a week, because it's fun. But while I'm teaching, I'm not flower farming, I'm teaching. So I only have time, and this is a tiny business. We have actively chosen to keep this business small. We don't want loads of people around. Fabrizio is a person who really prefers there to be, he would like us, small family in here with the gates locked, and he'd like nobody else here. He can just about handle workshops where people come to the farm, because at least we know who they all are, and there's small groups, we never have more than 10 people. And but he would really prefer that I did everything online, because then he would know who everybody is. And I get that, as small businesses have to respect the characters of the people involved. If Fabrizio was a different kind of person, we would almost certainly have this whole place turned into a pick your own patch, because that would be fun too. And I love people, so I would really, really enjoy that. If Fabrizio was a different person, we probably would have a shop where people could drop in. But we have to respect the way that we work. And so I like that, because it gives us very strict boundaries within which we have to achieve our objective, which is making a living. And so I teach lots of workshops, but because I enjoy it, and because I'm then paid to examine my life. How's that for philosophy in action? And Fabrizio gets to have a place where there are fewer people. If I didn't teach workshops, I would have a great many more hours, so many more hours that they would probably be weeks more in the year when I could be flower farming. I can't do both all the time. I can do as much flower farming as I can, and then I teach workshops because it gives me pleasure and because it's an opportunity to examine what I do and be paid to do it. Happy days. You don't have to do that. You really don't have to do that. There is absolutely no reason why anybody should be forced to teach workshops if they're uncomfortable. And no, there is no reason why you shouldn't make a living growing flowers without teaching workshops. If I said to my colleagues down at BJ Richards in Cornwall, oh, Paul, by the way, I can't see how you're making a living without teaching workshops, he would laugh in my face. And understandably so. As an old, established, generations of family business growing flowers for sale, I don't think they've ever taught a workshop. And they do jolly nicely. So that's a thought. By the way, I'm fleecing these seeds not because it's going to freeze. We've got a sort of false spring going on here. It's almost warm enough to take a jumper off. It is warm enough to take a jumper off. I have put the fleece over the top just to stop the surface of the seed compost drying out while germination takes place. Keep them little cozy people warm. So on this side I've got old plastic propagating lids, of which I have millions. So I guess what I'm saying is you can be any kind of flower farmer you like if you can make it pay. It is perfectly possible to make flower farming pay without teaching workshops. And you don't have to be a flower farmer even who sells, straight stems to florists or retail or however you want to sell it. You could be a flower farmer who grows edible flowers, or you could be a flower farmer who grows flowers for cosmetics or for soaps. You could be a big combination of the above. In my business, I am a flower farmer in a very artisan and small scale way for a very small local market, including about 30 weddings a year and events. I have a couple of really good local clients who have whole housefuls of flowers regularly, which is a nice way to make a living. And I have a retail local business, and I increasingly sell wholesale to luxury wedding florists. People like Fleur Provocateur, do look her up, she's very good. If you're looking for a luxurious wedding scheme in Somerset in the summer, she has very strong eco credentials, and likes to buy from me, and it's my pleasure to sell to her because she's extremely good at what she does. So that's a good part of my business. Another part of my business is teaching workshops. That part of my business is not flower farming, but it is extremely inspired by flower farming, and if I weren't a good flower farmer, I would be a very bad teacher of workshops. And if I didn't think very hard about what I'm going to teach in my workshops, I'd arguably be a much worse flower farmer. And now, third on my list is YouTube, which I started as a thing because I was sort of annoyed with Instagram. And as Instagram kept trying to make me do something I was uncomfortable with. And I kind of went, oh, go on then, I'll just have a go at YouTube. And it has become a considerable part of the business, to the effect that I won't ignore it. I will make sure that I keep up my YouTubing because it's become good money, and I enjoy it, and I enjoy it in the same way that I enjoy teaching workshops. It's like an extension of the workshop thing. So please, by all means, be a flower farmer, but only if you're confident that you can scale what you're doing up fast enough to make enough money for you. Never do what other people are doing just because it looks as if they know what they're doing and they have told you. I'm very lucky. I'm pretty unteachable. So if somebody tells me something is true, I don't necessarily believe them. I then just go and work it out and see if I agree or not. So back to yesterday's post when my very successful business type friends said, oh, but you're never going to make any money flower farming. And it was red rag to the bull time for me. I had to stop and I had to think. When they say money, what do they mean? What do they mean by money? What do they mean by a living? What do I mean? But very quickly I realised it doesn't matter what they think is a living. What matters is what I think is a living. So how much is a living for me? How much is a living for you? What do you need to live on? What does your flower farming need to pay for? If you can work that out, you can then quite quickly work out how many stems you need to grow and in what state you need to sell them in order to make that money. Do you need to? Can you work fast enough to sell them as retail bouquets? Then your stems each are worth 2 or 3 times what they're worth when you haven't done anything to them. Or are you going to only grow something that's very valuable that people will pay a premium for? Scented English country roses, untreated with any kind of insecticide or fungicide, leap to mind. So yeah, of course you can be a flower farmer and make a living without teaching workshops. Of course you can. But just remember, there are only 24 hours in the day. So whatever you choose to do, make sure that it works well for you. You're going to enjoy it. It'll be profitable for you. You do not have to teach to make a living. I choose to teach because I'm good at it and it's fun. But when I'm teaching, I cannot be flower farming at the same time. Okay? Good luck, everybody. Have a great season. I'm just working my way along this, inch by inch, mulch by mulch, and the season will begin soon. Have a lovely day. I've taken my jumper off and my scarf and my slop. That's weather for you. February. And just sort of one more thing. If you are going to teach workshops, then please don't be one of those people who teaches workshops and doesn't quite tell the whole story. I quite often find I have people here who've been on workshops elsewhere, and they come here and they say, it's such a relief. I've finally found somewhere where I actually feel as though I'm getting the full story. And they will have been on other workshops elsewhere where they leave at the end of the day and they feel as though there's some big secret that's being held back. I feel very strongly that if one is going to teach workshops, one should charge enough that one can tell everything. It's got to be worth it for the person teaching the workshop so that they have no secrets. So my workshops are not cheap. No. I'm not cheap. No. My workshops are not cheap. And my club here, which is like a mini workshop and where I put little extra bits of information. Again, the reason it's $8.99 a month, it's not cheap. But because I charge properly, I don't get the $8.99 a month, by the way. YouTube takes half. I get half the $8.99 a month. But still, it's got to be worth it for me. And if it's worth it for me, then I've got nothing to hide. I would rather tell people, I'm rubbish at keeping secrets anyway, and I can never work out what I can't do telling half the story. So if you're going to teach workshops, don't keep secrets. Don't make people feel as though they've paid good money and kind of got half the story. Charge properly and do it properly. There you are, top tip. I love the way I'm crawling around on the grass to do this. So at the end of the day, Wilderness Park Flowers, and I really hope this has been helpful. And it was such a great question, and I feel very strongly that's why I've answered in such detail. At the end of the day, what you need to do is make a cash flow forecast. Do you know what a cash flow forecast is? If you come on my lifestyle business or my career change flower farming workshop, you will get an example and some ideas for your cash flow forecast. But if you don't know what a cash flow forecast is, have a look at cash flow forecasting. Make it simple for yourself. And that will inform you whether you can grow enough to sell enough to put enough in your pocket. Nobody can tell you that you can only be a successful flower farmer if you teach workshops. That's an absurdity. It's not even an untruth. It's just ridiculous. However, the way to tell whether you can grow enough to sell enough to make enough for your pocket is to make a cash flow forecast. And the starting point for that is to work out how much you need your business to pay for in your life. Because then you work back from that and you can make sure that the profit after your cost of sales is enough to pay for whatever your business needs to pay for. Right, my family are coming back and they've got their hungry faces on. So I have to chuck in flower farming for an hour and make everybody lunch because it's half term. Bye.